And welcome back, or just welcome if you're new here. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And we are going to move on now as I give a dissertation on my favorite classic movies of all time, my 10 out of 10s, and we are moving on with my favorite classic actress of all time, Bette Davis, in All About Eve. Now, All About Eve was released in 1950, and it stars Bette Davis and Anne Baxter and George Sanders and Marilyn Monroe is in it, as well as Gary Merrill. I didn't want to leave him out. And it was directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and written by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and Mary Orr from the story The Wisdom of Eve. And so this was one of Marilyn Monroe's first big breaks. And Bette Davis loved her, actually, and I think in an interview in '77, she had very good words that, a lot of people thought Marilyn Monroe was a ditz, but to get high praise from Bette Davis said despite her flaws, her being late and her histrionics and things like that, that Bette Davis thought she was a great actress. And that's kind of cool to hear because I love Marilyn Monroe. One of my favorite Marilyn Monroe movies will be in this little festival. So, let's begin, shall we? This movie opens with an award ceremony called the Sarah Siddons Award. Say that 20 times fast. But we see Eve Harrington getting this reward, and we're hearing an narration by Addison DeWitt, and during this narration, we get introduced to the characters, Addison, of course, Karen, Lloyd, her husband, Max, the producer, Margot, Bette Davis, and Bill, Gary Merrill, whom they later got married in real life and did one of my other favorite movies by Bette Davis called Another Man's Poison, which is the movie they did after this. So, while we're introduced to the characters, we are then taken on a flashback, which isn't very far. It was only about a year. So this whole movie takes place within, 8 months, 9 months, something like that. That's how fast Eve Harrington worked her magic. Or her witchcraft. That would probably be better. So we see Karen arriving at the theater, and you hear a narration by her where she's talking about wondering where this girl is that she's always used to seeing. She finds her by the back door, introduces herself as Eve, and tells her a little story. And Karen wants to take her in to meet Margot. She, of course, puts on the, oh no, I couldn't possibly. And Karen takes her in. She meets Margot. Margot isn't interested at first, but, lets her in. And Eve weaves this really sad story. We're introduced to Margot and Bertie, her assistant. We're introduced to Karen and Lloyd. Lloyd is the screenwriter, the playwright. And Karen is just his wife and Margot's best friend. So, she weaves this sad tale about, growing up poor in a small town and marrying a boy from the theater named Eddie. And how he went off to war and she worked in a beer factory, a brewery, when he was killed in the war. And she was so heartbroken and depressed, she went to the movies one night and to the theater one night and saw Margot performing in a play, and it gave her a purpose in life, and there you go. So that's how she became obsessed with the theater and with Margot herself. Now, Margot and everybody is really taken in by this story, and they feel very sad and attached to Eve almost instantly. And rather than, when she gets up to leave, rather than let her go, and of course now Bill comes in, and we're introduced to Bill, who is Margot's boyfriend, and a director. He meets Eve, and he just showers Margot with all this love. I mean, they are such a good couple. But you can see why they got married in real life after this. I mean, it's pretty obviously those two had extreme chemistry together. But she gets up to leave, and they won't let her. Instead, Margot takes her in. She becomes Margot's assistant. She just does everything for her, and Margot's in heaven for a month, right? And because she's got this person that's just fawning over her, and Bill had went to Hollywood to direct a picture, and so she kept her company and just took care of everything for her. She was like the perfect assistant. So Bill's birthday comes around, and Margot is woken up in the middle of the night by a phone call placed by her, which she did not place, to Bill, who thinks it's such a great surprise. She finds out that, she doesn't really understand how this happened. But the next morning, she's gotten suspicious. Based on the stuff that he said on the phone. She suspects that Eve did this. And Eve had even planned a surprise party for him when he came back the next day. So she talks to Bertie the next morning. I know that you don't like her. Can you tell me why? And Bertie starts telling her that no, she doesn't like her. That she's weird. That she acts like a friend to Margot. But that from the outsider, that it looks like she's just studying Margot. How she walks, how she talks, how she acts, how she carries herself. And Margot is like, well, that's great, though. That's nice, And she's like, really? Well, whatever. I'm just telling you that there's some shit going down. So Eve comes in. Margot confronts her about the phone call. Oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you. Oh, and so, oh, okay. Well, yeah, that was sweet of you. And then, and Bertie's standing there, this whole exchange. So she's like, oh, okay. And then right before she leaves, though, she turns around and goes, as a matter of fact, I sent him a telegram myself. And Margot is an extremely jealous person. And on top of that, she has an extreme issue with her age. She's very, very worried. Bill's 8 years younger than her. She's already got an insecurity about her age. And so she immediately becomes real suspicious. And the look that Bertie gives her when she walks out the room, like, I told you so. So they go ahead to the party. Or the party, takes place. And Bertie comes in the room. Margot's getting dressed and finds out that Bill's already arrived. Been there for 20 minutes. Down there talking with Eve. But he's never done that before. He always comes right up to her whether she's getting dressed or not. So Margot goes down there. Bitch is already pissed off. Bitch is already ready to fight. But she plays it cool. and the guests arrive. She ends up getting into a fight. Well, right before the guests arrive, she ends up getting into a fight with Bill about why you didn't come up there, and I'm having second thoughts about Eve. Something's going on here. I'm tired of you calling her a kid. And, so all this jealousy and stuff is coming out. The guests arrive. Karen, Lloyd, Max, all of them. And even Addison shows up with Marilyn Monroe, Miss Caswell. So this is where we get the famous line from the movie. When Karen and Lloyd notice how she's acting, they're like, uh-oh. We can tell you're in a mood. Is it just starting or is it ending? And that's when Bette Davis turns around and walks up the stairs, and looks back over her shoulder and turns around and says, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. So the answer to your question, is it just ending or has it just begun? That was the answer. Fasten your seatbelts, bitch. We just crunked this bitch up. We're going down. So she gets completely hammered. Yeah. I mean, Margot is like completely hammered. She keeps making the piano player play Liebestrom, which is a very, very sad song. I mean, that's kind of shit you play at a funeral or something. She's supposed to be having a party. She is so drunk she can't see straight, and she keeps making a piano player play Liebestrom. It's funny, The dialogue that goes on, Max needs bicarb. Everybody's going off on her, like, what's your problem? What's going on? So she ends up asking Max to give Eve a job. Like, hey, all of my stuff is good. I'm clear. And so Max agrees. In exchange for her coming to the theater and reading with Miss Caswell, promised her a reading to play her sister. At which point Margot is like, well, if she can act, she'll be all right. She looks like she might burn down a plantation. That was funny. And so she agrees to go and do a reading with Miss Caswell to replace her sister's character in the play if he will give her a job. Well, and then there's a whole lot of other stuff that happens at the party. Some knockdown drag-outs all the way to the end. Her and Karen fight. Her and Lloyd fight. Her and Bill continue to fight. Well, she shows up at the theater a couple hours late as usual. Miss Caswell's done with the reading. Only to find out that Eve has been made her understudy. She's not happy because nobody's told her anything about this. She's already like frothing at the mouth, jealous of this girl, of Eve. She now is very suspicious of her, and behind her back, they've just made Eve her understudy in the theater. So Addison is the one who tells her all of this. Not only that, but he just like really plays it up. What a fantastic actress she was. How wonderful it was. How much Bill loved it. How much Lloyd loved it. Really set her on fire. So she goes in there, and at first she acts like she has no idea, right? She's like, oh, where is everyone? Where's Miss Caswell? Here I am, And they're like, oh, she already read, and Max, she like throws her coat over Max's head because, he's supposed to give Eve the job. And instead, now she's found this out. So she goes up there and it's like, oh no, she's your understudy. Really? My understudy? I had no idea. And it doesn't take but like 2 minutes before the shit goes off again. Nobody can be a bitch like Bette Davis. No one ever can be a bitch like Bette Davis. So they have this huge, huge fight. She runs Lloyd out the room. She runs Max screaming out the room, leaving, and Eve, of course, she got the hell out of there at the beginning, leaving just her and Bill, and then they continue on until finally he literally breaks up with her and leaves. So, did I lose myself? So everybody is really pissed at Margot, and Karen decides that she needs a little kick in the pants. So Karen comes up, because remember now, everybody's still on Eve's side. Everybody still thinks she's this innocent, poor little thing. And Margot, well, actually only two people, Margot and Bertie, both know that this bitch is shady. You know, I mean, that she's a nasty little slag is what she is. And so Karen, when Lloyd came home after that fight and heard what a giant fight they had, she decides that, you know, somebody needs to teach Margot a lesson. And I think I know how. So she comes up with this idea that at this weekend they're having at the cabin, she'll drain the gas tank and call when they leave Sunday, because Margot's got a show that night. When they leave, the car will run out of gas, causing Margot to not be able to perform in the play, which will allow Eve to go on. Now, Karen had arranged this with Eve to kick Margot in the pants. Nobody else knew, just Karen and Eve. Well, what Karen even didn't know was that she immediately called Addison DeWitt. And between Addison DeWitt and all of his Broadway friends, he had pretty much every damn reviewer in town at that accidental performance of Eve Harrington in place of Margot, who was stuck out on a damn road in an empty gas, or car empty of gas, no petrol. And she had done this whole thing. Karen had done this. When they got back to town, there was reviews and articles and everything everywhere. So they're like, how? Why? It was just a little out of the way theater. And nobody was really supposed to know. It was just supposed to be a little joke on Margot. So Addison had written a horrible, embarrassing article about the theater, which basically called Margot a worn out old turnip whom was causing, along with people like her, was causing young, talented, beautiful actresses like Eve to not get the recognition and chances that they should. Now, Margot's already got an extreme problem with her age, which is 40. But she's already got an extreme problem with, insecurity about her age. And now she's blasted by the most read theater critic. And everybody knows who he's talking about. So Bill shows back up and they get back together. Because it just devastated Margot. So Addison, after that performance had ended that caused all this. So I guess I'm taking a step back for a second. Addison had made a deal with Eve because he went back to congratulate her and found her trying to screw Bill. I mean, she made a big play for Bill. And Bill's like, not interested. I love Margot. Wrong. Foul. Just, what did he say? Just consider it, just chalk it up to an incomplete forward pass because I'm not interested. So, Addison overheard that. Addison knew exactly what this bitch was now. Just like him is what he knew. So, he made a deal with her that he would help her further her career. So, everybody now knows that Eve is bad. I think the only one that didn't really at that time was Lloyd, you know. He was still on her side, but of course Karen knew because Karen was the one that had this deal with her. So, they all decide to go to get dinner because so you've got Lloyd and Karen and Bill and Margot. They go to dinner, which is unusual for her, but they wanted an announcement. Now, when they get there, they announce that they are finally going to get married. Bill and Margot are going to get married. And while they're celebrating that, they see Eve and Addison over there. Now, everybody already knows that she's bad. So, suddenly, Karen gets a note. Because you see, Lloyd had been writing a new play for Margot like he always did. Eve wanted that role from Margot. So, Karen got a note to meet her. She's like, I ain't going to meet that bitch. But Margot and everybody was like, no, go do it. Because we are so interested as what this little bitch has got to say. You know, so Karen's like, okay. So she goes up there. And she, of course, is like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause all this. You know, Addison just got me to say things I didn't really mean. Karen don't believe it at all. And it's like, bullshit, whatever. And so she gets up to leave. And Eve is like, there is something else that I want from you. I want you to get Lloyd to let me play Cora in his new play, Footsteps on the Ceiling. I want that. And Karen's like, you fucked? I can't stand you. And Eva's like, well, that's all well and good, except for one thing. You saw the reaction. I got bitched out all over town about what was said about Margot. How do you think that all of those people and Margot herself is going to feel when they find out it was you who plotted with me to cause this whole thing by draining the car of gas? This is all you're doing. Me going on in place of Margot was a direct result of you doing your thing, coming up with this plan. You called me. So Karen is like, this bitch is good. Evil. And good at it. So she goes down there not really knowing what she's going to do, because how is she going to accomplish this, this thing? Luck is definitely on her side, because after she says, yeah, she cried, she carried on, whatever, she didn't say much. They had a new announcement too, and that was that she no longer wanted to play Cora in that play. Because now that she was going to be a forthright, upright, married lady, she had something else to do with her time besides play characters that were too young for her. This makes Karen start hilariously laughing, because she was like, I was just in some deep deep shit like 60 seconds ago before you said that. And now you've just let me off the hook. You don't know it, but you just left me off the hook. So she indeed manages to get the part, Lloyd never even asked her, as a matter of fact. She just sort of got the part. And so, yeah, she doesn't want the part anymore. That lets Karen off the hook. And then Addison knows that Eve and Lloyd have had an affair. So that made you feel bad for Karen, but, they ended up having an affair. And Addison visits Eve right before the first performance of that play that she did all of this to get. Where she ends up, playing him, telling him that Lloyd is going to leave Karen and marry her and stuff like that. Now, Addison, he's just as much of a shark as Eve is. And he's like, no, ma'am, that's not, Lloyd may leave Karen, but he's not going to leave Karen for you. For many reasons, one of which is I won't allow it. So she gets up and she's like, how dare you? What are you talking about? You won't allow it. And he's like, you just don't seem to understand the situation. You fooled all them dumbasses who trusted you. I never trusted you. It's trust that gets a person conned. You might have conned all those dumbasses who fell for your bullshit and thought that you were this great person, allowing you to get them to turn their back so you could stick a knife in it. I've never done that. I know exactly what you were since I decided to take an interest in your existence on this planet. I know you lied. I know your parents are alive and wonder where the hell you are. They ain't seen you in 3 years. I know you worked in a brewery and got thrown out for cheating with the boss, your boss. You got caught by his wife and were paid money to get the fuck out of town. That's how you got the money to come do that. There is no Schubert Theater that you said where you first saw Margot. That thing burnt down in a fire. It was easy to find out your lies. That's how bad you are at this. You think you're good because these idiots let you fool them. But people who aren't idiots are not going to be fooled as easily. See how I just busted all of your lies? You never were married to a guy named Eddie who died in the war. That was an insult to dead heroes and the women who married them. So understand, after what I just told you, that I own you. You are allowed to be this thing that you are right now because I allowed it, because I took an interest. So I will determine what you do, when you do, where you do, and who you do it with. Oh, well, I can't go on. I just can't go on. I can't. Yeah, you will, because you're a shark. And you just got nipped on the tail by another shark. A bigger one, with a larger bite. But you're still a shark, and you still want this fame, fortune. So you'll go on and you'll do the performance of your life, because that's what sharks do. And she does. And that's when we fast forward again, or we come back. Yeah, fast forward. We come back to the beginning of the movie, the award dinner, where she's getting this award for this great giant achievement on this play. Now, she, of course, is under his complete control, Addison's control. So after the party, everybody, Karen and Margot and everyone give her the finger, basically. And she's going off to a party to do this, but she doesn't want to go. Addison's like, well, I worked too hard for this through you. You know, so I'm going to go to the party. Well, just drop me off at home. So Eve goes back to her apartment. Addison goes on to the party. Now, when Eve gets in there, she's walking around. She's packing because she's going out to do a film. I mean, she probably is going to be a mega star. She's, sharky enough for it. While she's fixing a drink, she sees someone in the mirror sitting behind her, and she turns around, and it's a girl. Please don't arrest me. I'm sorry. I was in here looking around, and I fell asleep, And Eve is like, bullshit. Who are you? What are you doing? And she's like, I'm the president of one of your fan clubs, and I just was doing a story on you for the fan paper, and blah blah blah. Eve falls for her own shit. It was so funny, So what's your name, Phoebe? Okay, so her name is Phoebe, and she's the president of a fan club, and Eve falls so quickly for the exact same shit she did that it's not even funny. So the girl starts immediately taking care of her. She goes to the door when it knocked on, and it's Addison, and he's like, she forgot her award. And what's your name? Oh, it's Phoebe. Oh, I'm sure, Would you like one of these awards one day? Yes, sir, I would. Ask Eve. She'll tell you how to get one. She knows all about it. So she walks in there, and you know she's just like Eve. Because Eve's like, who was that? She's like, oh, it was just the cab driver. He was dropping off your award. Oh, okay, well, just put it in the box. I'll take it with me. And she walks in there to the mirror and is holding it up, acting like she's accepting it, which is exactly what Margot had caught Eve doing one night with her dress from the play that she was doing. Letting you know, I mean, this she's already lied about her name. She lied about Addison coming to the door and said it was the cab driver. She's immediately started taking care of her. She's doing everything, and it's amazing that Eve would fall for the exact... But that's how people like that are. Sharks always think they got the biggest bite. So it wouldn't even occur to her that this Phoebe was doing the exact same thing she did, because sharks can't be bit. They are the top of the food chain. That's what they think. All sharks think that until they run across the killer whale, right? So, that's it. That's the way the movie ends, is Phoebe standing in front of the mirror. Which, a little bit of trivia, if you ever watch the movie again, there's a little blooper in it. And that is that when Phoebe is standing in front of that mirror at that credit scene at the end, holding her award, if you look at the very top of the mirror, you can see the reflection of a boom operator sitting in his chair on the thing. It was a little blooper that they didn't catch. But yeah, so if you look at the very top of the mirror, when Phoebe is holding up that award, you will see an assistant boom guy sitting in his chair on a crane up there behind her. So that's a little bit of trivia for you. But yes, that is all about Eve, one of the best classic movies ever made. And Baxter, Moses. Yes, I love Ann Baxter. Bette Davis, The Little Foxes, Beyond the Forest. Bette Davis is my favorite classic actress. Favorite actress ever, actually. But I thank you for stopping by, taking a little time. For all you classic movie fans out there, there's just nothing like them. And if you're not, you really should check out some of these classic movies. They are probably different than you think that they are, where their themes and stuff is concerned. But I will see you in the next one. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember and never forget you're a very, very special person, even if you are not the winner of a Sarah Siddons Award or have stabbed your best friend in the back to fucking get one. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.